Hello.
Hello.
We can start now. So we're happy to have you here.
We're happy to be here.
For starters, do you like the show
Yes.
till now?
Very much, very much.
Did you check the other rooms around?
Some of them, not all. It's many rooms are very difficult to get into, like ours.
Do you have a favorite though?
Of course.
Except yours.
I prefer to reply to that when I actually get there the whole way around. No.
No, I'm kidding, of course. Yes.
I would say actually I don't remember the name of the exhibitor, but the speaker's audio solution sounded actually quite okay. We've exhibited with them before, and you know they can be quite tricky in the lower frequencies, and that they actually did quite well in the room they had. So I remember that.
Great.
I'm not saying this is my favorite room because again I didn't see all the rooms yet. So
Yes, you're gonna be tomorrow also.
yes,
Here, so
leaving on
you're
Monday.
gonna have some time, I hope,
Yeah.
to check them all. So, how many years did you work with fine audio equipment and developing amplification?
Oh, I founded the company in January 1995. So it's actually 25 years ago. But I didn't bring out any products before 2000, officially 2004. So from 95 to 2004 was more R&D.
Okay, and tell us more about yourself. For example, as your main profession and your passion, music and audiophile products, plus how it all started the day you decided that that's what you want to do.
How many questions in one was that?
It's everything about yourself in a brief explanation.
Well, that's the tricky part, being brief. Well, I actually took my basic engineering education because of audio. When I was around 13, 14 years old, I got my first stereo, and the first thing I did was taking it apart and looking inside, and I was wondering what is this? And I was like, oh, that was not where I was supposed to put my fingers. So I need to learn this. So that's actually why I got into electronic engineering. Already at that time as well, my interest for music came from playing myself. So I play drums.
Do you have a band?
We actually have a band in the company, yes, with our son, who's playing the guitar, who also has a company in audio called Acoustic. I play the drums, and we have our what do you call that? Our production technician, I think, is the right title to put on him. Plays the bass.
What kind of music do you play?
Mostly rock.
Nice.
We are Nordic people, so we like to be loud, and so it has to be a little bit, you know. So when I was young, I was in what do you call that? A street marching band where you had flutes and drums. So I was playing the drums. So that was that type of music, and I started playing drums, the drum set when I was around 13, 14 years old. And I was never at a drum set before, and in school they needed a drummer, and I was only used to one drum. And they just put me at the drum set, and they say play, and I just played, and never looked back really. I had a long break, but that's a different story. So yeah, that the passion for let's say audio reproduction comes from being a musician. I'm not a professional musician, never was, and the interest for electronics came from the same background. So that's what started everything, and it's still. What drives me. It's not it's cool to make the product, it's cool to design the products, but the result is actually listening to music. So the listening to music is what's the most important thing for me still.
Amazing. So how do you see things in the near future? Is there a really high-end amplification game changer, or companies upgrading partially already well-known designs?
You mean from us?
Yes.
Well, we kind of did that last year. Last year we brought out the signature integrated amplifier that we call the SIA 030, which is actually what we're using here at the show. We brought that out at the Munich show in May last year, and it's already been taking a lot of awards. It's one of, I'm told, this is not me saying it, I'm told this was one of the artist products of 2019. Of course, that makes me massively proud. So we're kind of still living on that. We're still promoting it around the world. That's also why we're here, to promote it here. And so, yeah, what's next? Lots of things is next, but
Not sure yet.
Well, I did decide, and I'm working on the roadmap and a little deeper than that. But I'm not going to spoil the fun.
Okay.
It's going to, you will see.
You'll see in the future. Okay, great. So, tubes versus solid state, your opinion. Is there a real battle after all, or just
No.
audiophile's taste?
Well, I play drums, but I goof around with guitar and bass, electrical guitars and bass, and my bass and guitar amps are tubes. And it's for one very simple reason. I mean, when you love the sound of electric guitars, you like to have, especially in rock, of course, you like to have distortion. And tubes have an even harmonic distortion, doesn't bother the ear. Solid state have unharmonic or uneven harmonic distortion, and the ear really don't, it bothers the ear. So from a musician point of view, tubes will always be kind of the real sound, because you can make it sound groovy and aggressive and distorted, but without pain in the ear. But it's also it is a pain for the musician, because tube amps are huge and heavy. So for going on tour and stuff, of course that's a roadie problem when you get to a certain level. But that's a drawback of that. What I actually tried to do with our electronics, which is all solid state, is I wanted to combine the kind of the sound, especially in the mid-range, female voices and stuff like that. It has like an organic kind of sound from tubes. I wanted to try and merge that and combine that with solid state, which has more control at the lower frequency. And from what, again, I'm told from the market, we did quite well. But this is also one of the reasons why I took from 95 to 2004 to do all the R&D, because it's not easy to do. So it took long. So from a battle, I think more and more people move away from tubes, because tubes wear out. You have to change tubes. You have to adjust them all the time. Solid state is kind of plug and play. If as long as you're happy with the system, you just enjoy music. You don't have to worry about when a tube starts failing, let's say. So that's the shortest answer I can give.
Okay, great.
I can talk for a long time about that.
Some uncommon specifics which you would like to point on at the Vitus top tier amplifiers.
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
Maybe if some uncommon specifics, something is not really out there. About the Vitus top tier amplifier.
That's a very difficult one to do in a short time. But from a technical point of view, we don't use global feedback. So that's one thing. There are lots of other companies not using global feedback, but we are very persistent on that. We don't use any parallel output devices in the power stages. Most other manufacturers do that. I decided not to. Again, that comes back to the whole merging the sound of tubes and solid state. So we don't use parallel output devices, and we don't use toroidal transformers, which everybody else is using, which is also one of many reasons why our electronics are fairly expensive, because we use, when you have a normal toroidal transformer is of this size, we use UI transformers. They're like this instead. So they're heavy, they're extremely expensive, and it's a custom design on top of that. So there's there's a lot of talk about that. But the main point for me was the transformer is the first component that is limiting a power amplifier. So I actually spent about 4 years getting the transformer design done to my specifications, which we didn't know in the beginning. We didn't know what the right specification was. It was trial and error to figure out where we had the least limiting factor of the transformer. And this is why, again, the amp we're using here is a 30 watt class A amp. and it will drive anything. And you take a normal 30 watt Class A amp, and it probably won't drive anything. You have these. There's a Greek, I think Greek ribbon speaker manufacturer, really expensive, huge one. I don't remember the name, but they are not very easy to drive. But it's, for us, not a problem.
Okay, that's very good. So, how much better sounding do you think solid-state amplifiers can get? Do you think there are still some major advances waiting to be discovered?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Major.
Well, you can look at this from many different angles, but yeah, I'm definitely not done developing yet. There's always tweaks you can do where you optimize a small part of a circuitry that has a huge impact, not only on sound but lots of different areas. So yeah, I mean, even though, of course, everybody, not everybody, but lots of people in audio industry in general are talking about Class D amps, because this is the future. They're small, they're easy, they are green, but they have
green is the future for sure.
For everything these days.
And maybe the only thing that's gonna left.
Well, actually, just on a funny note, I was just reading about a Danish designer for cars called Fischer. So he's just launching a new car where all the interior of the car is vegan. But he is writing that directly. I was reading it here because I thought it was funny, because it's become such a buzzword, right? It has to be green, environmentally, what's the word they're using? I can't remember.
Friendly?
Yeah, well, not friendly, it's a stronger word. And then vegan, there are these buzzwords that, people will put into their marketing without any parallel to the products they're doing. So it's a little bit funny sometimes. But no, in terms of Class D, they're for class or digital amps to sound musical. Oh, they have a long way.
Okay.
And of course, in a normal solid state amplifier, like a tube amplifier, it's really old technology, but the components are improving all the time. But if you don't improve your technology around the improved components, you don't gain anything really. So yeah, there's continuously a development.
Okay, so we have a long way to go.
Yeah, we will never finish, I think.
Yeah. Recently you produced this gorgeous upgraded CIA 30 Class A solid state amp.
Yeah.
Also in ηχοεπιλογής shoot here in our expo.
Yeah.
Tell us more about this project.
This was probably in the past many years, this was one of the toughest products we ever made, and one of the things we have, well, I have to talk about our Masterpiece series, which is the most expensive series we make. We have a pair of mono amps called Masterpiece. It's the Masterpiece mono amps. They're actually in 4 chassis. So one chassis, it's 2 chassis per channel, and one chassis is just a power supply, fully regulated power supply, also for the output stage. So this is 4 chassis, which is the same height as the SIO30, but quite a bit deeper, like 11 centimeters deeper than the SIO30, and it's just 4 chassis. And basically what we did with the 030 is that we took the power supply technology from those mono amps in 4 chassis and squeezed them in to one chassis smaller. So that's also about the technology we were just talking about. Getting from this massive amplifier into, well, I call it a small amplifier, but it's not really small. It's 63 kilos, so it's not small. But getting all the technology into that limited space meant that we had to push our boundaries a lot for integration on the actual boards, but also integration of the boards into the chassis, embed stuff into the heat sinks, etc. It was absolutely a nightmare to develop, we got to certain times of debating in the engineering team where we, at the end of the day, agreed to just disagree and move on. But we managed at the end of the day. But it was a tough one. So it has a fully regulated power supply for the output stage, fully regulated power supply for all the input stages. Obviously, has a new higher resolution volume control, which is all done by relays. We can put in a DAC streamer into it and a phono stage, The DAC streamer board is just about to ship next month, and the phono stage will be introduced in Munich this year. So, you know, if you have a fully spec'd 030, you can just have a turntable as a source, and a streaming or a streamer or music server, or just hook it up to your Ethernet and stream directly from any services.
Or CD
well, yeah, of course, yeah. Any digital front end or analog front end, and yeah, you have one box solution with just adding the sources and speakers, obviously. So.
Great, you answered my question. So, what about sources? You prefer to focus on digital side of reproduction. Tell us more about your current digital converters line and future upcoming predictions, if any.
Well, actually, I prefer analog. I'm one of those. How shall I say?
Old school.
Well, yeah, I have a very patient wife because I have about 40 turntables in total.
Wow, well done.
Well, and some of them are projects, and projects I don't have much time for. But you know, I'm still young. And now I actually moved into R2Rs and master tapes and stuff like that. And we do phono stages for turntables, obviously. But yeah, we're moving into the new age, so to speak. So we did add streaming. So we have 3 main digital front ends. So we have in our reference series, we have now our DAC, which also includes streamer. We have, which you also have here, the signature CD player, which is designed as a DAC with a drive. We also have a pure DAC version of that with streaming, and then we have the masterpiece DAC as well. So that's kind of our products. But of course we have for our 2 of our integrated amplifiers, like the 030, that you can have an included DAC streamer on it as well. In terms of predictions, it's a never-ending, evolving market, and from a manufacturer point of view, it's an absolute nightmare from time to time, because then you have MQA. I don't believe in MQA. I will not support MQA. We do it via streaming, but the DAC itself will not support it. You know, there's new things all the time. Resolution changes and sample rate changes, and then this and then that. It's become a fashion, I think, more than a focus on actual quality. And so for me, digital is something that we support from the company point of view, and from a sound point of view, it's also really moved a lot. So the quality is actually very high today. But I'm not really a follower when it comes to that. I'm not. There's other people in the company telling me these things. You know, yeah, we should probably look at and focus on and move in this direction. That's not my personal drive, I have to be honest.
Okay, great. Let's talk about measurements and what they can and can't tell us about power amplifiers' performance.
Well, they can tell us a lot. Well, measuring is extremely important, which is why we spend a lot of money on our measuring equipment, plus 100,000 euro. But you know, there are limitations, because you have a measuring equipment that can actually measure the sound, or the sound quality. You know, that's tricky. There's ways around that, of course. The most important measuring equipment for sound, for me personally, is ears, because you can detect things with the ears that you cannot detect with measuring equipment today. Even though, of course, the quality of the measuring equipment today is a lot better than it was 5 years ago and 10 years ago, etc. But we don't let the measurement dictate the end result, so to speak. That's for the ears to do that. We measure throughout the R&D to make sure that we know what we are doing. But the most important thing for us in terms of measuring is repeatability. We have to make sure that serial number 1 and serial number 100 and 500 and whatever it is are the same. And we can only be absolutely sure with measurements. That being said, we do lots of measurement on every product we make, but every product goes through a full listening test and a full functional test at the end. So we don't just say, okay, so everything measures perfectly, let's pack, let's ship. No. we do a full burn-in, and then we have somebody manually going through everything and actually listening to the product. And only there, when they say, yeah, it's correct, we approve.
Okay, great. So, and we're going closer to the end.
Yeah.
So, two last questions. Tell us your spot differences between audiophiles and market in Europe, United States and Asia. Is there a different approach request?
That's a tough one.
Yes.
There's definitely there's definitely a difference in how, if you just say Asia, US, and Europe, that how we perceive sound and the ideal sound that we're looking for. And it obviously it also depends on what type of music you prefer to play. But especially in Asia, I would say it's a lot about specifications in the beginning. I've talked to people where they see power rating on amplifiers and they say, no, but this power rating is below 500 watts, so I don't even want to listen to it. And you know, that for me that's strange, but that's sometimes how some people do. In the US, from a marketing point of view, it's my perception that you have to tell everybody you're the best in the world, because if you don't tell everybody you're the best in the world, it seems like they don't take you seriously, and they might not want to go have a listen like the Asians wouldn't do if the power rating was not correct. Where in Europe, it seems I wouldn't say we're more curious, but we don't let specs and marketing kind of stop us for whether we want to have a listen or not. That's the simplest way I can describe it, because it is a very difficult subject to cover in a very short time. Because of course there's lots of different nuances to that.
There is an extra question which is not mine. It's from another fan. So I'm gonna read it to you, and you can choose what you want to answer to him.
Okay.
So, he says, voicing of a system is tuning to taste. Also, we are trying to decompress the real thing, recorded with flaws and compromises, and packed in the can of any digital format through a high-end system, always in search for the real thing in front of us. But finally, turns out as a fine-tuning to our tastes. But who stays to admire first? First, is the question. I know it's a big one.
That's a big one. That's a very, very good question.
Yes.
I mean, the simplest way, it's absolutely true. It's always about test. All manufacturers talk about, well, we want to be as close to the original, to the truth. We want to be absolutely neutral. And to be honest, there is no such thing. There is absolutely no such thing. I mean, I make products, design products that I like, that I want to listen to. And when there are other people that have the same, let's say, taste, that's a cool thing. However, it's all about, at the end of the day, references. And this is where things start to become really tricky. I can talk about this for hours, by the way. So I'm not sure how the memory card is doing there.
Well, yes, but there's also a sub-question in this
question.
Okay,
can I answer this one first?
Okay, yes, maybe you can
I will try to do it short. No, but it's about the reference. And as I mentioned before, I'm an amateur musician. But one of the things that is really tricky is the reference. So people say they go to concerts and that's their reference. And I always ask, so what type of concert do you go to? Well, I go to a rock concert, or I go to this concert, and I say, okay, that's cool, but how is that a real reference? Because there, you're at the taste of the band and the sound engineer. Because you have a sound engineer, because it all goes through a PA system, so the sound engineer is actually the judge of what that sounds like, and so for me that's not a real reference. And then people say also sometimes, no, but I go to acoustical concerts, and I always ask, so how many people are in the audience of those acoustical concerts? They go 1,500, 2,500. I'm quite sure there's a PA system in there as well, because that's a lot of people to cover, and you can't cover the front row and the back row in an equal manner if it's all acoustic, so there has to be some sort of PA. So what's the real reference then? And I was actually asked this a few years ago at a show in Finland, and my reply today is the same. Well, because he was asking, so what reference would I recommend people to have? And I go into the street, find a street musician, stand in front of him or her, because of course if it's acoustical, because there you will actually hear the real instrument and the real voice, because there's no acoustics to disturb you, because it's in the open, so there's no or judgment or whatever you call it from the acoustics. It's open air, and to me that's a much closer reference. And how can you as a manufacturer repeat that? Well, you can play yourself, and this is what I do. From when I sit in my home lab and I just goof around with my guitars, even though I use electrical, also acoustical, but mostly electrical guitars, I can hear what I'm doing in my own lab, and within 20 seconds I can play it back one-to-one. So I have a fairly close reference, even though it's electrical. And that is really important. And it's not something, I'm not judging anyone, but it's such a good question. The most important thing for me when I listen, and this is what I'm telling everybody, is that and this is without any taste actually, this is the personal preferences and the voicing completely apart, that if you sit in front of a system and you listen to music and you within 20 minutes, half an hour or so, you start to turn the volume down, or you start taking your phone or do other stuff than listen to music because maybe your ears is getting a little bit fatigued, then it's wrong. And this is something which I really designed for. So I don't want a system, regardless of what system it is, I don't want the system to dictate for how long I'm going to sit there and listen to music. I want to be able to sit there for hours and hours and hours. And this is one of the, you actually asked the question earlier in terms of what is different between us and many others. Yeah. And this is exactly it. I don't like listening fatigue. It's a no-no word for us. And that's specifically what I designed for.
Mm-hmm. So the sub-question in this question I just asked was what room is it in? What's your suggestions as the best pairing for Vitus amplification, and why these speakers or cables as a combo?
So generally speakers and cables. And
yes.
Wow, that's
that was a big question.
That's an even bigger question. So this is a huge memory card. Well, from a political point of view, because I get this question a lot on emails every week, and normally I always answer very neutral, saying I can't really give you a specific, it works really well with this and it worked really well with that, for multiple reasons. One, we already covered, personal taste. I mean, I have my personal taste. So, for instance, here, they use focal speakers, and I always like focal speakers. There are lots of people that don't like focal speakers. I love the way focal speakers sound like when they're fully broken in, and the broken in part is a big problem for vocals because they take so long before the bass starts to actually be released and start to have some volume to it. But they are extremely crisp, they are extremely fast, you have a huge resolution and it plays everything. But that's just one. We also have Martin Logan's there. Martin Logan's were one of my first high-end audio speakers, and I still love the sound of that. But there's so many others. I mean, and this is one of the things where we also try to be a little bit different, because I don't want our products to be shining really well with one particular or handful of speakers and cables. I want to make sure it works with as much as we can possibly make it work with. So we have Rockports, we have Gauders, we have Martins, we have Audio Solutions, we have, I can't even remember how, old Infinity, Estalon speakers of course, and the old Infinity IRS Betas that I'm actually refurbishing right now. I have a pair of Sonos Faber Extrema because they are really good for designing also. They sound great, but they're really good for designing because they are very tough load for the power amplifier, etc. So I mean,
There's no real answer for this.
No, it's very open because
Exactly,
for me to be able to answer that, I would have had to have the person's preferences. What type of music? What type of room? Is it a hard room? Is it a soft room? You know, this is a fairly soft room because you have carpet and obviously have a bed and everything. Hard room is where you have tiles and all of that. How big is the window? You know, all these. This is room acoustics.
Yeah, also, is it a modern house with a lot of windows and hard surfaces?
Exactly, because windows is subtracting bass. I mean, it's a bass absorber. So it's the room acoustic, and this is what many people forget. This room acoustic is minimum, absolutely minimum, 50% of the end result of the sound. I've come to places, to some of our partners around the world, where you have a system which is massively expensive, and they haven't finished the room, and it doesn't actually sound really great. And you come into another room where they are finished with the room, and the acoustics are just right, and they put a fairly simple and not extremely expensive system in there, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. So room acoustics is way more important initially than the actual gear, I think, because it dictates the result. But no, and for cables, I mean, we've also tried so many different cables. If I was supposed to name all of them, I mean, we would not be done until our flight on Monday. so no, it's a very long one.
I will have to go to the last questions.
Yeah.
So the last one is, as the finale, what music would you take with you, both of you actually, on a deserted island? That's a plain question, I think.
I would never go without Doors. I would never go without Tool. I mean, my preferred band of all times right now is Tool.
Wow, and they're back.
Oh yeah, and it's on my phone, and I'm on the plane with my shitty Bose noise cancellation. It's going like this. So, and then there are some classical music, and there's some pop from when I was young.
What about you, Brita?
Oh, I don't know. That's a very difficult question.
Oh, I know Robbie Williams for sure.
Yeah.
Robbie Williams, absolutely.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound that good on
No.
the system.
No, it doesn't. No, I would probably bring some Black Sabbath and some Thin Lizzy, and I would probably have Rammstein. I'm very rocky.
You're a hard rock metal fan then.
Yeah, I am. No, I wouldn't even say that, but I guess that's probably just because I don't know what their names are anymore. But for me, Rammstein and those guys, it's not metal. It's hard rock, and you know, I like that. But I like less of classic. Kind of Blue. I mean, how can you forget about Kind of Blue? You have to have some jazz in there as well, and we listen to a lot of jazz. I mean, I listen to rock when I'm in the car and she's not in the car, or I have noise cancellation headsets. If I put any of the stuff I just mentioned on the system at home, first of all, I probably would be disappointed of the sound quality, and I would probably have a very angry face looking at me and going, "See you later."
I'm out. Okay, great. Thank you very much. It was great meeting you.
Thank you, likewise.
Enjoy the rest of the expo.
Thank you very much.
Me too. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.